also receive treated surface water from the Shelterbelt Water Treatment Facility, of which we can all attest of the major outcries of poor quality of water. All of this is said to be coupled with a now defunct flushing exercise within the company, which aids in the removal of red water and the buildup of iron from the distribution network. Several sections of management have complained that flushing is no longer a regular exercise since there is hardly ever a fully maintained flow of water in the distribution network, especially along the east bank and east coast of Demerara, Georgetown, and Region Number 2. The crisis worsened with senior management being vocal about the CEO returning with his same attitude of not wanting to approve and buy new parts and spares for operations and maintenance, which they said was his trend pre-2015. It is important to note the woes of GWI regarding staffing since the return of the PPP. 184 staff were dismissed or terminated from 2020 to date. 210 were resigned, of which a number were forced to resign. At the end of 2022, the total number of employees being removed from the company's enrollment outside of death or retirement stands at 475 employees. The press statement that will be released will give details of downtime for operations and the operating hours that were reduced at the water treatment plant and well stations. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have the statement by the Leader of the Opposition, none other than Mr. Aubrey Norton, Member of Parliament.
Thank you. And good morning to the members of the press and all. Last week, we contended that Ghana is in crisis and virtually every sector is in crisis. I note the Vice President saying that if we tell him which sector, he will tell us what is the plan. That to me is a manifestation of the crisis. A government that is run should be able to produce documentation to establish that they do have a plan. Having said that, it is evident that the People's Progressive Party is heartless, lawless, greedy, and corrupt. Yesterday, as leader of the opposition, I visited Region 5, where I met with residents who were concerned that a contractor who is the family of a senior PPP official was digging up the burn ground to get materials to use in a contract that is allocated to him. This Rosignol burn ground fiasco, as I will call it, is really sad. One assumes that there is basic human decency and that at least the dead will be allowed to rest in peace. Mm-hmm. All of us say rest in peace. Unfortunately, the heartlessness, the greed, the lawlessness, the corruption of the People's Progressive Party has changed that situation. And in the case of Rosignol Burn Ground, they are not allowed to rest in peace. Having met with the residents, they pointed out that the contractor is a family of a leading member of the government. They also pointed out that they have engaged the NDC, which is controlled by the PPP, the RDC, which is controlled by the PPP, and all of them seem to want to not to take any action. And so I engaged them and agreed that we will put it in the public domain. We have already released the videos, and I understand as a result of the release of the videos, the PPP head into the area to do damage control. But the people did say they complained continuously to the PPP with no response. Now, the people are demanding that the contractor cease digging up the Berengrong area and allow the people to rest in peace. They are also demanding that the contractor must indicate to them where they can find the bodies of those they dug up and move away. They are contending that in excess of 50 persons would have been dug up, moved, and they don't know where they are. And so we want to say on behalf of those people, we believe it is the obligation of the government at various levels, the NDC, the RDC, and the national government to ensure that this practice ceases and that people are told where the bodies are and mechanisms be put in place for the forensics to be done so that they can identify those bodies and return them to the place where they should be allowed to rest in peace. Also on our visit yesterday, we visited Shieldstown, in which the people showed us firsthand what they passed through. Big trucks driving through the community, throwing sand into the houses, dust into the houses of people. And they have contended that it damages their equipment. People are getting sick as well. But what should be noted is that they showed us that there is a route that these trucks could go without passing through the community. But our understanding is that these trucks are paid based on the amount of trips they make. And so they want to cut it. We want to plead with the government, because it's a government project, to ensure that they do not pass through those communities. And if perchance they have to, you should wet the road. As yesterday, from the time the information got to the government that we were there, they came to wet the road. But the people said they normally don't wet the road. In the night when they finish, they might just throw some water. By day clean, it is dry and they suffer. And so we want to urge the government to look after the interests of those people. They said they're told by the EPA that they don't have any jurisdiction. It's the government. As I understand it, the EPA really should be looking into all matters environmental, and this is an environmental hazard. I also want to comment on Vice President Jack. They were saying that they deliver 50,000 jobs to the people of Guyana. I sense by now everyone knows that you cannot trust the words of Barry Jack Dale. He's just a pathological liar. But I want to ask the question, where did the statistics come from? Because up until 2019, under the AP and UAFC, we had a labor force survey done. Up until now, since the PPP is in government from August 2020 to now, there has been no labor force survey. And if there has been one, it was not released. And so we say to Guyanese, you need to take Barra Jack Deo's pronouncement with a pinch of salt, as we call on the government to provide information so that a proper assessment can be made. Because everywhere we go, people are crying out for jobs. And the government's claim that it would have created 50,000 jobs seems to be in conflict with reality. And so we do not think that 50,000 jobs were created. We have seen no labor force survey to tell us the level of unemployment, how much employment was created, and therefore such a pronouncement we find unacceptable. But it is in the nature of Barra Jackleo to make these grandiose claims when the reality is totally different. And so we believe that unemployment is still high, and we are waiting the figures from the government on this question rather than a political party pronouncement. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will take questions on the statements made, and of course, by the show of hands, and you will state the name of your news agency. Question?
Good morning, panel.
Yes, you can go
This
ahead.
one is for Mr. Jordan. Now, you talked about the water situation countrywide. Are these people who are suffering in Region 5 being asked to pay water bills? And if so, how is the demand being carried out? Is there any pressure on the people? And threat of disconnection, that kind of thing.
Thank you for your question. Yes, they are being asked to pay water bills as regular, as monthly, and within the region, I know of reports where GWI still insists that they will disconnect customers, even though they might not have received water 3-4 days per week, or sometimes 3-4 hours during the day. One of the things that is presently ongoing is that they're upping their revenue drive, and so you find that they will have schedules of areas to be disconnected, and some of the very areas that are to be disconnected or where disconnection is to take place are the areas that are suffering tremendously from no water and sometimes lack of water supply during the day for many hours.
So the next question is, how do these people who are not getting an adequate supply react to the disconnection? It's like having nothing. So how do they react? Do they complain? Has there been any attempt to protest to the regional GWI offices?
One thing I can tell you for sure is that in Region 5, we have a very close connection with our communities. And when I say we, from the local government level, one Miss Angela McDonald, who is the current chairman of the Profit Rising Sun NDC, just over 3 months ago, she spoke with the regional manager for GWI, where she outlined that from 10 in the evenings, water would stop running. At Bushlot Well Station, where I'm being served from, I spoke with the Minister of Housing and Water, Mr. Colin Crowell. He was at that time aware that water would normally be cut off at certain times in the night, and that water would then return certain times during the day. In the Cotton Tree, Rosignol area, I can tell you that because of the same well that is down presently at Rosignol, the water treatment plant cannot supply water on a 24-hour basis. And so you find that during the hours when people would need water, that is when the tank would run out of water. So you cannot pump to the residents or customers. And so I represented both the Bushlot area and that Rosignol area by speaking with persons within the organization at the managerial level, because you would know by now that I came from that organization. And so several complaints have been made, and we are in constant contact with GWI. One of the threats we made during last year, when they actually had a faulty timer system at many of the locations throughout the region. And so you find that from the time the voltage fluctuates from GPL end, we would have water outage. And we threatened them that we would protest and that we would come before the office and demand that we receive water 24 hours. And we noticed a slight change from then. And it has returned almost to the same position and even worse.
Thank you. Question on the statement?
If nobody else is ready to go for Mr. Norton, please.
Go ahead.
Now, so you talk about the contractor digging up cemetery for material. What kind of material do you want from the cemetery? What are you doing with it? And when they dig it up, you dig up a grave. I mean, you didn't say how recent these graves are. Is there any medical system to protect the society? Because, I mean, I'm too familiar with what has happened with dead people except that they're dead. But is there any medical thing? And I heard you ask about removing the bodies, which suggests that they take care and they carry them somewhere. So those are my questions. What are they doing with the material and things like that?
Well, when I met with the people there, they said that one of the persons was buried as late as last week, but that grave disappeared. The big problem for a lot of them is that they know that the material was dug out. They claim that the contractor has a contract somewhere in the area, but what they don't know is where the bodies that were dug out in the process are. And it is one of the things they've been trying to get the local government body there to answer, to no avail. And that is why we said in the public domain, the government must engage this contractor, and the contractor must be made to tell the people where they are, and people should be able to retrieve the bodies, and that mechanism should be put in place for them to do what is necessary to identify them forensically. As it relates to the details in terms of the medical aspect, just like you, I'm not qualified to comment. But I believe if there's a government foregoes this focus on just getting rich at all costs and recognize that this is a serious issue and it has crossed the road, for the want of a better term, to the side of extreme lawlessness and disrespect for the remains of people, loved ones. They should now go and ensure that the bodies are identified and the mechanisms are put in place for them to be buried properly and for there not to be the disturbance in future in this country by any contractor feeling that they have the right to disrupt a cemetery to achieve their objectives. Let us not forget that there was a similar battle in Plaisance at one time with serious consequences. And when a government allows contractors that are close to them and people in the party to believe that they can do anything to fulfill their contract obligation, including disrupting the resting place of people's loved ones, I think we are in bad shape.
Thank you. Any other questions on the press statement?
Yeah, you didn't tell me, Mr. Norton, what kind of material you want from the cemetery?
It's like a mixture of sand and loam. That is how it looked like. I saw the material yesterday. That is the material. And when you look at the construction around, you're seeing the same material being stockpiled. But I don't know from a scientific standpoint if I can say specifically what the material is. As a person who grew up in Linden, we know sand, we know overburden, as we call it. It looks like a mixture of the sand and the overburden.
Thank you. Any other questions on the statement? Okay,
Shanika, I have a clarification before we move off the statement.
no problem.
So just building off of what the leader had said there, actually the last labor force survey would have been in 2021, but it's been missing for a couple of years now. And in fact, we raised the absence of proper statistics with the IMF because it is a serious concern in terms of monitoring the Guyanese economy, planning for the Guyanese economy, and moving us forward. So that's one particular note. The other note is, as it concerns this 50,000 jobs statement by Jardio, he is including amongst that 50,000 jobs from his statements the 15,000 part-time workers as part of his claim that they've created 50,000 jobs. Now, if anybody believed or thought that that 50,000 was supposed to include 15,000 part-time workers who are not able to earn a living from that job that can sustain anyone, then I believe that this is totally wrong-headed. So to put forward that 50,000 statement, first of all, without proper statistics, and second of all, to be including part-time workers in there is just shameful.
Thank you. All right, I'll open the floor for any other questions. Ms. Davina.
Hello, good morning. This is Davina with Kaija News. My first question is, the government has not yet provided proof that Exxon had any evidence that their work program was delayed so as to justify the extension of the relinquishment, the 20% of the Starboard block. Given that the opposition had called for the release of these documents, what would be your next step to hold government to account, Mr. Martin?
Well, let me say that we believe the government should be held accountable. That's the first thing. The second thing is we will have to look at the laws to see if there is a case. You will recognize that Anil Nandalal is done seeking to block any attempt to get accountability by suggesting or asking judges to put harsher penalties for what they call frivolous cases. Of course, this is not a frivolous case, and there are certain obligations the government have. So the lawyers will have to look at it and decide on the legal way forward.
Thank you.
Sir, Exxon consultant has said that it has never conducted an economic study to determine the likely devastation from an oil spill in that block where they operate, the Starboard block that is. Would you be calling on government to pursue this soon so that we can, as a nation, be properly prepared for such an event?
Well, there are a number of things here. When we met with Exxon, we did indicate to them that we were concerned about an oil spill. At the time, they said, and I want to use correct language, that it will cost more than $2 billion. And we said at that point that there is a reason that you will ask for a parent company guarantee. Exxon at the time said that they were prepared to honor and to deal with any oil spill, and Elsa was there. I think what I'm saying is a correct reflection. And so we anticipate that they will fulfill that promise. But outside of that, we have always been saying that all of these things should have proper feasibility studies, proper analysis, and we will continue to push to ensure that that is the case. You cannot operate such a mammoth industry without proper economic analysis, etc. It is even useful for us to know, because in the future, you have to plan how you deal with all of these blocks, etc. And you are dependent on data to do that.
So just to follow up to that question, you said you anticipate that they would honor their commitment and clean up the environment, but does this mean that you're not interested in that parent company guarantee being sought by Guyanese citizens?
I said, this question was asked more than 3 times, and I've said we support parent company guarantee. So to me, it's kind of illogical to ask this question. At least
But
more.
you said you
Wait a minute.
anticipated with other commitments, so
No.
are you not looking for a written guarantee? That is my question to you.
My answer to you is more than once, my dear. We have said we believe that should be this parent company guarantee. So to me, the question is a non sequitur because regularly we have said to Kaicho News, to the general public, that we support the parent company guarantee.
Davina, just to give you some kind of a clearer understanding of how seriously we take this issue. What the context within which we discuss this really is the question around the production of oil beyond nameplate capacity. Because of course there's been a lot of concerns around the production of oil beyond what the vessels necessarily are intended to do. And so we asked really to get a sense, or at least to raise to the operator, that it is vital that appropriate protocols are in place if there's going to be additional production, and that it is vital that the appropriate studies are done to that effect. The reason that we are asking these questions is because we understand the severity and the seriousness of the issue. The reason that we've called previously for the parent company guarantee is because we understand the seriousness of this issue. And so that is the context within which this was discussed.
And
Thank you very much.
may I also point out that personally, I undertook to read a lot of the material as it relates to oil spill coming from Valdez right down. So we have an understanding of what could happen if there is such an oil spill. We also are of the view that as a country, we lack the capacity to deal with those things. And therefore, we have to put the mechanisms in place. We want to see Exxon do business. We want the Guyanese people to benefit from oil. But at the same time, we want the safeguards to ensure we protect our natural resources and our people.
Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, for me, we see countries already using Guyana's mistakes in the oil sector to improve their industries, like Suriname over the weekend. We reported on this. I just wanted to know how the opposition views this.
What we've observed, I know that ring fencing, I believe that you're referring to ring fencing, is one of the areas that Suriname has been looking closely at. We've, of course, spoken on this issue, but more specifically, we've spoken on the need to pace the rate of new developments to ensure, first of all, that we are able to get a higher return in terms of the share that we receive as a country, but also in terms of ensuring the level of preparedness of the country so that we can meet our local content goals and so that we can properly monitor the industry so that we can get the true value for Guyanese that we should be getting from it. And so we have evaluated really the best way forward, and we believe that by pacing this and by careful study of this, of course, we've previously remarked that we need to be carrying out regular studies of each of these developments so that we have a clear understanding always of the economics behind them, and so that can inform the pace at which developments take place.
It is also critical to understand that while we want these developments to occur, you have to build institutional capacity to audit, to monitor, etc. And while there are some who believe that you should just go ahead and produce, like Elson said, we believe we need to pace it, we need to study them, and we also need, and I think I said this before, to do a survey to see what we as a people need to be able to monitor, evaluate the sector, as well as to ensure that the local content keep rising rather than declining. And all of those are critical. And that is why pacing becomes important. And that is why I disagreed in a previous press conference with Jagdeo approach, which suggests that you just take everything out of the ground as quick as possible, because at some stage, there isn't going to be a need for oil. I think it's a flawed analysis. While I agree that there are negatives to oil production, we have called for the use of environmental space. We believe that for some time there is going to be the need for oil. And even as we recognize that, we have to do it in such a way that we prepare ourselves, increase our capacity, and ensure our people in Guyana can benefit from it.
Thank you. I see the hand.
Will follow up? I think I need to rephrase my question. What I was trying to get from the opposition is how do you feel about countries already using Ghana at such, at an infancy stage? Countries are already using that as a negative experience, and what, taking these experiences to better their industries. I just wanted to know how you feel about our mistakes already being used to sort of improve other industries around the world.
I would say this to you, and in fairness to the then government, in 1999, when this process started, you were a high-risk country, you weren't getting investments, and your terms were bad. You came into government 2015. By 2016, you were looking at a PSA. It had already started to bring benefits, and it was evident that there were flaws. Now, if I'm in another country and I'm dealing with an oil sector, I will look at any other country and see what are the mistakes they made, see the context in which it would have happened. And then as I move forward, I would have attempted to improve whatever arrangement I put in place. I don't believe in having feelings about mistakes. Mistakes, you analyze them, you see those that you can rectify in the short term, medium term, and long term, proceed to rectify them, and work assiduously to ensure that the same mistakes aren't made again. I know the general concerns. We have already addressed them. I think we did say one of the things we will do early in government is to engage Exxon to ensure that we approve whatever arrangements exist.
I see the hand of Miss Svetlana Marshall.
Hi, good afternoon. Svetlana Marshall from News Source. This question is directed to Mr. Norton. Mr. Norton, yesterday the Vice President said that during a cabinet meeting, the President called Exxon, and it was explained that Exxon and government never agreed to a $3 million, well, the cost recovery audit, the questionable expenses being reduced to $3 million as suggested by the opposition. Could you provide clarity on that matter as to what exactly was said to the opposition during that meeting?
Let us start by recognizing that Barra Jagdo is a pathological liar, and anything he says has to be taken with a pinch of salt. But I am aware this morning I edited a letter that will be sent to the press. In this letter, we're saying, one, we engaged ExxonMobil on the 8th of September 2023, that we raised with them this whole question of the paid company guarantee, and they said at the time that they will honor their obligation, and they proceeded to say that they operate based on integrity, transparency, and accountability. We also said in the letter that we sent in that ExxonMobil owes it to the public to say whether it is true or not. In that meeting with us, they did say that they agreed with the decision to bring it down to 3 million. They agreed with the government. And the reason that they didn't pursue it further was because it was voluminous documentation and it would have consumed a lot of time. And I know that the letter that we will put into the press, if it's already not there, because I know I sent it to the person who should put it, we made it very, very clear that that was a discussion we had with ExxonMobil. And the only area that I can expect a pronouncement to come from on this issue is ExxonMobil. We know what we said is correct, absolutely so. There's no need for us to lie. And so that is why we ask in the public domain for Exxon to address it publicly, because we are also aware of the nature of Barra Jagdo. Sometimes, no call was made anywhere. But that's the nature of the man.
Just to build on that as well, folks, it is not just that there's a flyaway comment that this 3 million was agreed. There were explanations provided. It was an entire conversation, and so we can't take seriously what Jagdeo is saying. It is not some random thing that was said. It was an entire discussion, and it was stipulated that they could have gone further, which is what Mr. Patterson has recently said. But they said that it doesn't make sense given the length and the amount of paperwork that's involved. There was explanations provided. So, I mean, I don't think Guyana should take Jagdeo seriously from that perspective. There's another element of this, though, that we need to dispel, which is that Jagdeo keeps saying that the reason that he doesn't want to engage with this audit is it's technical and there's technical people and so on. But, folks, one of the main contentions, which is what we raised with the operator, is the provision of information. That is not a technical matter. We raised that because the auditor had indicated that information was not being provided even after multiple requests. And so we had to raise that with the operator. Any reasonable government would do so. Has the PUP done so? Now, the other thing that we want to point out here is, it's certainly interesting to hear that the president would call Exxon in front of cabinet to say that they hadn't agreed this. But you know what I take away from that? I take away from that it is very possible that the president and cabinet do not believe that this investigation really has come to the bottom of it, and that there may be more to come from this. So I would ask you in the media to, when you next see the president, to ask him whether he has confidence in that investigation and confidence in Barry Jagdeo remaining as the minister responsible for oil. Because this seems to me, and of course I could be wrong, but it feels a bit like a Nancy story, doesn't it?
Thank you. I see the hand of Mr. Dennis Trevor.
Thank you. Mr. Norton, can you say whether the opposition has incontrovertible evidence to dispute what Mr. Jagdeo said yesterday?
Mr. Jagdeo said plenty of things yesterday.
Yes, we're talking about the subject matter concerning Exxon Mobil and the $3 million reduction.
How? I don't know what we mean that the opposition has incontrovertible evidence. We're saying to you, this is what we were told. All 5 of us who were in the meeting will sign a letter saying that is what we were told. I don't know what you mean by incontrovertible evidence.
No, if it comes down to you proving your position as being accurate, do you have that concrete evidence to prove beyond what you said in the letter?
This is not a meeting that was recorded. So I don't know what you mean by uncontrovertible evidence. I think if 5 of us were all there and we're saying this is what is discussed, we wait to see what Exxon would have said and then we deal with it. But I don't know what you consider to be incontrovertible evidence when there are 2 sides to it.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
This is to Mr. Norton. 2 days ago, internet connection just now. I didn't realize that. No, I asked back the same question, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, there was a statement that Senior Counsel Rosedale Ford had written asking for details of Bobby Gosai's foray into the audit. I'm asking about the $214 million audit. And you, sir, was said to have issued a statement which said you had no interest in those things. No interest meaning what? That you couldn't care or that you weren't pursuing
It was badly
the matter?
it was badly put in the newspaper. If you read the statement, this is what happened. After this 214 million came, between the vice president and the minister, they started to suggest that it is a public servant named Gosai that was responsible. In our press conferences, leader of the opposition, we said clearly that Gosai is not an issue here. And we're not interested in the investigation into Gosai, whether he did it or not. Our position was, one, the PSA and the laws of Guyana give the minister the authority and the responsibility. And you cannot now come and throw Gosai under the bus by saying that it's he who did it. And so we took the position even before Council Ford asked the question. We took the position that we are not going to get involved in anything about an investigation involving Gosai. That for us was to sidestep the critical issue. It was to scapegoat Gosai and protect. If you look at our last press statement, we said it is an attempt to protect Barra Jackdew and the minister. We further said any member of parliament has the right. We don't believe in curtailing our members of parliament. Any member of parliament has the right to ask a question. But as a political party, we had already taken the position, as opposition, we had already taken the position that the minister is responsible, that the vice president is responsible to come now and ask for Gosai contract, etc., would have served to legitimize this thing about you investigating Gosai, and we weren't prepared to do that. We have no interest in any investigation into Gosai and what mistake the gentleman would have made. Apart from the fact that we believe that he was being scapegoated, we know full well that the responsibility falls with Jackdew and the minister. They should be held responsible, and therefore we're not going to be browbeaten into asking for anything about Gosai. We are politicians. We are representing the people. The people, the law says the minister is responsible. If the minister wants to do the investigation internally, that's his business. But for us, the political directorate is responsible. And that is why we said we had no interest in any internal investigation into Gosai or whoever it is. Because to do that would have given the PPP an escape route to blame Gosai. Because, look, if you have an internal investigation, there is no way it's going to be independent. You will have the outcome that the minister wants. Why should we go legitimizing that when the law speaks specifically to the minister being responsible, and we should not allow them to shift blame? And that is what I was talking about.
Thank you. All right, I will take, I guess, 2 more questions. Any other questions? Mr. Kimal King.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kimal King with File Now. I would like to know first, given that the government has started consultations, I see that they've had meetings with the trade unions on the upcoming budget for the fiscal year 2024. whether the opposition has had any meetings with the government on that, or if you do plan to, and if you could give us an idea of what you hope to see in the upcoming budget.
Let me say at the outset, we have had no such meeting. And if you follow our budget debates the last time, generally our position has been the budget doesn't fit into a national plan. 2, that the critical issues of poverty and high cost of living have not been addressed. 3, that human resource development is probably the most fundamental thing that a country like Guyana needs at this stage of development. And therefore we expect a shift towards developing our human resource, while at the same time focusing on development of infrastructure. We also believe that there should be infrastructure plans should be in keeping with our capacity to deliver. As it stands, it's a slush fund for PPP corruption, and those issues we hope will be addressed. But we know the PPP, they're not likely to address, particularly the last one, because corruption is the order of the day for them.
Can you say what are the human resource initiatives, development initiatives you think should be put in place?
Now, you're talking about developing an economy. You are trying to fight off also the Dutch disease, meaning all other sectors become critical and you have to put resources into. You've heard us advocated for agriculture in regions 1, 7, 8, 9, and 10. What that would mean is that you have to train the persons to be involved in agriculture in those regions and provide resources, etc., for the development of agriculture in those areas. There was a time in this country when you had extension workers, people going and help people in agriculture. We think that should be one of the focus. We also think that we need to train our people to satisfy the skills that are needed in the oil sector. So we expect to see not just a blanket public service ministry thing saying goal, and then it's goalless. It must be structured to satisfy those needs. We have continuously said here, we need to develop our capacity to do audits. So we would need to train people, but we would also need in the short term to budget for proper international companies to help us to achieve our objective. I can sit here all day. Take agro-processing. There is need for training of our young people in agro-processing so that you can develop micro and small businesses and give them the grants, etc., that they can be involved in those things and contribute to the development of the economy. All of those are areas that I think we pointed out that the university is training a lot of people. But then what you do with them? We had established that we would like to see many of them put into groups that work on data and develop the analyses that are needed. That is another area the money can be put into so that you have a professionally trained core that can help political decision. The stupidity of saying everybody is a specialist is real stupidity. What we need is trained professionals that can guide the politicians, because as a politician, you might study governance and some study nothing, but we anticipate that you'll study governance, understand some basics, but that you need the professionals to assist you. As leader of the opposition, I would have come to this job not with any expertise in oil and gas. I came with international relations, political science, communications, etc. But it's an obligation for me to engage people who specialize in the area to give advice. Similarly, a government should be informed by proper professionals with professional information, rather than a vice president running around like if he knows it all and talking whatever come to him out, rather than what has come out of brains that are trained to deliver quality information to us. So all of those areas we have to tackle with.
I just wanted to add one on a couple specific points. We've been calling for the University of Guyana to be made free and for all student debt to be written off. That is obviously something that we will continue to call for. But what we've said is we must move beyond just making the University of Guyana free, but provided the resources to become one of the most prominent universities in the world when it comes, at the very least, to oil and gas matters, but to really develop that university. So there's a key area in which we believe that human resource development can be facilitated and where resources should go. We've also said that we have a program, 50 for 50, where $50,000 a month should be provided as a stipend to 50,000 students, people that are training, so that those people are given some support as they engage in training to meet the needs of the economy. Those are the types of programs that we'd like to see immediately put forward in the budget, and that are absolutely affordable. You will recall that the share of the budget that has been spent on the University of Guyana has shrunk as each consecutive year produces a larger budget, but the university is starved of resources. This is totally unacceptable, and more so unacceptable in a country in which there are such human resource needs. We should be investing in these institutions. We should be building institutions. We should not be undermining them by stagnating funding, even while the budget between 2018 and now has tripled.
Additionally, if you recall, Barajagdio as president promised that the Institute of Applied Science and Technology will be funded and become one of the main institutions leading research, etc. We're not seeing that. That is an institution that should be funded as well and should be organized in such a way that it helps us to get into new industries with new people, etc. But there is not that kind. If a man virtually tell you the plan for the country in here, you raise the sector and he can tell you, then you understand the level of stupidity that passes for governance in this society. In the research department, there should be a clear policy and program to ensure that we improve our research capability. Those things should be linked to the economy, so they are producing the people we need to ensure the development of this country. The problem we saw with the Bangrong and a number of other places is also a manifestation of a lack of a proper land use policy. People seem to just appear and they could do whatever they like with land. I travel the Suzdijk Linden Highway. If I remember, the law says, I think 500 feet on the left, 500 feet on the right. As if this government is not catering for expansion. You'll see people getting land and coming right to the road. In fact, they broke up the whole shoulder of the road along the highway, which will eventually erode the highway. But there is no structured approach to development. Now, are you saying to me, one of the problems that causes Suzdijk Linden Highway to have some high incidence of accidents is because it is a two-way road? Now, if you are looking to the future and you are catering for the development of Guyana, they are talking now about resurfacing the two-lane highway. Any forward-looking, forward-thinking person would have sought to build a parallel highway, okay? Continue to use this two-way, you build a parallel highway. When you complete that highway, you let people go on that one for two-way while you rebuild the old highway, and then you change it into a four-lane highway, 2 lanes going that way, 2 lanes coming this way. So you don't have a situation where people overtaking around a corner and all the nonsense that occur. So I'm saying to you, essentially, Barjack, they're saying he got it in his head, it's garbage. And that is probably what is in his head. It came by accident. We need to, in a very structured way, look at the development. And I just give you the highway as a case in question, because as I saw, they're budgeting for rehabilitating like it is, but there is no plan for its extension. And as you see, they allocate the lands on the highway, either people doing their own thing or they allocating it very close to the highway, which will close off the options that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Did you're finished, Mr. King?
No, I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So last week, David Patterson, during the Alliance for Change press conference, talked about how he believes that in the oil and gas sector, there is an uneven playing field for companies operating offshore Guyana. He said that given that companies that are looking to pursue developments are going to have to abide by different terms than ExxonMobil at the Stafford block, that they may be less inclined to pursue development because they're thinking that it's not fair that we have to get fiscal terms that give us a lesser portion, a lesser take of the revenues from production than ExxonMobil and Stafford. Do you believe that companies would be less inclined to pursue development given the new terms that they have to abide by?
Frankly, I don't understand the question. I don't understand the question. What is it you're trying to get at? I don't want to answer, and I'm not clear as to what you're asking.
Okay, no problem. The government has put out a new petroleum model agreement in which the fiscal terms would get a higher share of the revenues for the government rather than the oil company. And it is seen as a more favorable agreement than what ExxonMobil has in the Stafford block. So the idea is that perhaps other companies may be less inclined to pursue development offshore Guyana if they see that they have an uneven playing field when comparing themselves to the Stafford block with ExxonMobil.
I can speak on this. Now, essentially, it's important for us to understand that when the original agreements were drawn up regarding the Stabro block, we had a country where there had been no significant oil finds for a very prolonged period of time, with I think dozens of wells having been drilled. That's a radically different situation today. And so any company that is approaching Guyana right now will be approaching knowing that we've found so far was 11 billion barrels of oil and had countless successful wells. So I don't think that is really the way to look at it. Rather, the way to look at it is to say that we must recognize that Guyana has been blessed by oil resources. We must look to govern the sector as well as Guyanese people really would be looking for us to govern the sector. And it is our expectation that companies would be happy to drill in Guyana given the successes that have come over the past few years. So that to me is the way to look at it. But on the other end of it, of course, we've said repeatedly that we will speak to the operator in terms of getting the best for Guyanese going forward.
All right, thank you.
Could it then be inferred now that the opposition is not in favor of renegotiation of the Stafford block PSA?
I will answer. I have answered this question numerous times. I've continuously said that there is in the agreement a mechanism for the government to engage ExxonMobil and make whatever changes we think are in the interest of the people of Guyana. I repeat, we are still prepared to do that and will do that.
All right, thank you. I stated before I took Mr. King's question that I would only take 2 questions because we have a constraint in time. Based on what I'm seeing here, I will only take 1 question from Mr. Benchcock, 1 question from Mr. Campbell, since neither of them would have asked questions already. Mr. Benchcock.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I have a question, or in fact, questions. One has to do with Barra Jagdeo, and this is directed to the leader of the opposition. Barra Jagdeo, in his rantings yesterday, said that he has taken umbrage with what Dr. Vincent Adams said, and quite politely, I've heard what Vincent said concerning the judge's ruling, recent ruling. Barra Jagdeo is saying that it is disrespectful, and he's calling on citizens to stand up and denounce what Dr. Adams said. Is it ironic that the same Barra Jagdeo, who has a history of attacking every single member of the judiciary when they do not rule in his favor or his party's favor? I'd like for you to touch on that bit of hypocrisy. The other question has to do with another hypocritical statement coming from Barra Jagdeo as it pertains to housing and contracts. And he's basically saying that people should not trust middleman or a middleman and so forth. Isn't it ironic that the very Jagdeo that has been accused by a middleman sued and has not yet answered that question is calling on middleman to come forward? And finally, I know I said two, but this is an eighth of the second question. Thank you, Mr. Lee. That Barra Jagdeo puts out there yesterday in his rantings that 50,000 jobs were actually created. I know this was touched on briefly earlier, but 50,000 jobs when NIS shows evidence to the contrary. Unemployment is rampant throughout the country. Where do you believe Jagdeo got that 50,000 job creation from? Thank you so much.
I will start with the first one from his head, from his political perception and persuasion. It has nothing to do with fact. As it relates to being a hypocrite, I think Jagdeo knows he's hypocritical. So we don't need to really delve on that. The only way he can survive is if he's a hypocrite. I mean, just look at the elections. When he lost in 2015, he said need for biometrics and a clean voters list. And the minute he's back in government, he didn't want to hear nothing but that. Hypocrisy is interwoven into the fabric of the man. As it relates to the comments on the judge, again, it's hypocrisy. But I want to say this. I commented on the judgment. I think it was on your show that I pointed out, I thought the judge erred and didn't understand the difference between the polluters pay principle and paying for polluting. And I pointed out in your program that the polluter pays principle came out of the negotiations in the environment when the developed countries were seen as the polluters and as being negotiated and sought to have the matters dealt with. There was a general agreement that the people who would have polluted are the people who are expected to pay to rectify it. That is distinct and different from you putting within a contract that if you flare so much amount, you will pay so much amount. That is paying to pollute. We have to object to paying to pollute. We have to have a situation where there is minimal pollution. And in that regard, I don't think it is disrespectful. Any citizen, after a ruling, can look at a ruling and decide to what extent it corresponds to the facts. And in this case, I am clear that the judge did not, for whatever reason, sought an understanding the difference between the polluter pays principle and paying to pollute. But I wouldn't listen to Jagdeo and anything he says, because if you're running from the bailiffs, it's going to share the court order or the lawsuit, whatever. If you're running from them, you could understand the man. And the man has been so dishonest that virtually every time you wake up and you open the papers, somebody winning a lawsuit against him. It's the manifestation of a man who is not interested in facts. He's just interested in politics and achieving whatever objective he wants, including lies.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Norton. Kirk Campbell from the newsroom here. I wanted to solicit an official comment from you on the political leadership of Region 4, which is controlled by your party. And I'm asking this question particularly since the chairman was charged this morning, and also your vice chairman is reportedly before a party disciplinary committee. And in answering that question, can you also provide some clarity on why Mr. Sandy is before that committee?
First of all, I don't know that Mr. Sandy is before any committee at present. I know that the executive dealt with the Sandy issue, and if he's to be placed before a committee, then once that happens, it will be known. As it relates to the chairman of Region 4, he is being charged. The courts will do their work, and at the end of it, we all will know the outcome. Of course, I want you to observe how easy it is for an opposition member to be charged when there are people who are accused of raping a child, an indigenous child. They were allowed to escape, and it is not one, it's many. So it speaks to the nature of the police and law enforcement in this country. But in this unequal world, we wait the outcome of the case with Daniel Searam. As a member of the executive of the party, we wish him the best, but the court will decide whether he's guilty or not us.
Mr. Norton, if I'm allowed a quick follow-up. Are you in a position to say what exactly is the Sandy issue?
The answer is no. When the central executive pronounce, I will let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, I want to thank all our media houses for joining today's press conference, and I thank all of the viewers on all of our social media pages as well. We hope that you do have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, my name is Jacinti Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my ex next to the cup, and what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.